This is a story about something that happened to me when I was very young. I remember it well because it was just a couple days before Christmas. I was 11 years old and very excited for Christmas because I knew I would be getting the brand new next generation GameCube console. It was bundled with Super Smash Bros. Melee and I was so excited. We had this basement that was unfinished and I often got scary vibes when I went down there. My parents were a little bit of hoarders, and this is where all their years of junk had accumulated. It was very dark. There were a couple of bare light bulbs hanging from the rafters of the ceiling, but the light never seemed to penetrate just how dark it was down there. It couldn't get around all the piles and boxes and rows of shelves. Well, I knew that somewhere down there was where my parents were hiding all my Christmas presents. So I waited until one day on the weekend when my parents left me home alone. They went out to dinner or something like that. I don't actually remember where they went. But while they were gone, I thought I would get in a little early practice on the GameCube. I got it out from the spooky basement where it was tucked in the back corner under a big blanket with some other gifts. I took it out of the box and played Smash Bros. For a while. It was so amazing. I couldn't believe how good the graphics were. I knew I couldn't play for long, though. I didn't want to get caught, so I put everything back in its own little bag, and I put it all back in the box, just like it was when I opened it. I put new tape on it and sealed everything back up. Unless you looked really, really closely, you couldn't even tell that I opened it. So I went to the basement to put it away. I pulled the little metal chain that hung from the bare light bulb on the ceiling. The bulb gave a little flash of light. It made a popping sound, and then it burned out. It was pretty dark, so I stood still for a second to let my eyes adjust to the dim light. There was still some light coming from upstairs, so I could see well enough. I put the GameCube box back and covered it with the blanket. This is where it starts to get really creepy. I stood up and turned around. My brain didn't register what I was seeing for a moment. I was looking straight into the eyes of a man, a little man about a foot tall. I was just staring right into his eyes. He was inches away from me, standing on a shelf. We both kind of froze in shock. I was looking at him, and my brain was just fumbling to make sense of what I was seeing. I didn't sense any danger. He didn't seem threatening. In fact, there was something about him that was a little bit familiar. I don't know how many seconds passed while we both stood there, frozen, staring at each other, but eventually his face broke into a smile, a mischievous smirk. He winked at me, and then he lifted his hand and pointed his finger. He pointed at something right behind me. I turned to see what he was pointing at, and there was nothing there. When I turned around, the little man was gone. I searched the basement thoroughly. I was freaking out. I got a flashlight, and I looked in every corner, but I couldn't see any trace of that little man. Soon my parents got home, and my mom saw I was in the basement. She thought I was snooping on presents. She told me to come back upstairs and stop peeking. Well, I went upstairs and I told my parents about the little man that I saw. My dad told me that it was impossible. It was my mind playing tricks on me. I was mistaken because it was dark. There are no such things as little people or anything like that. He was always very scientific and very skeptical. My mother was more of a spiritual person. She liked astrology and alternative medicine, stuff like that. She said anything was possible. If I saw something like that, and if I said I saw it, she believed me. But ultimately, I had no proof of anything. I told my friends at school, and none of them believed me. People started to think I was a little weird, and I was making up weird lies. I had to just accept that it was this weird thing that happened to me, and that other people would never believe it. It was impossible, like Bigfoot or El Chupacabra. It's impossible that those creatures could be living among us and not be documented by now. Eventually, I started to even doubt myself, what I had seen so clearly with my own eyes. Maybe I couldn't even trust myself because I was only 11, and 11-year-olds have active imaginations. So many people told me it was impossible, it started to feel that way, even though I saw it with my own eyes. It was about a week later when I noticed something that convinced me I was not crazy. It was a little doll. My mother had a collection of them. They were on the shelves in the living room, and they were all a little bit creepy, but it was then that I noticed one of those little dolls was the man that I had seen. I went and asked my mom about the dolls. She told me she had gotten them from an elderly lady that lived across the street from her when she was growing up. She used to visit the old woman who was a widow and very lonely. When the old woman eventually passed, she left in her will the collection of little dolls to my mother. I asked my mom if she knew anything special about this doll, the one that looked exactly like the little man that I had seen. She didn't seem to think it was special. I asked her to tell me the truth. Had she ever seen any of the little people? But she said no, and I believed her. That's about all there is to the story. I have a few theories about the little man because I've done a little bit of research about people who have had similar experiences. The Lilliputian syndrome might be related. That's a type of psychological disorder where the patient has hallucinations, making everyone they see appear very small. So, if this is the explanation, does that mean there was actually another person in the basement, like a robber or some intruder? And that still doesn't explain the doll. I believe that the doll has to have something to do with it. It's possible that the doll comes to life. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I'm forced to believe. It's possible the rest of the dolls in the collection come to life too. I don't know. But they sit in my mother's home to this day. Thank you for listening to my story. If you did like it and you want to hear more stories like this from me in the future, please like, subscribe, all that stuff that everyone says. Just to be on YouTube or to make money doing creative stuff like this would be a dream for me. So if you could help me out with that and give me support in that, I would really appreciate it. Thanks.